My name is Kyle Golding. I'm the CEO and Chief Strategic Idealist for the Golding Group. We are a strategy business development consulting firm here in Oklahoma City. We work with the BBB of Central Oklahoma on their strategy and business development. And I'm very happy to be talking to you guys today about strategic communication, how you can utilize data to make your communication stronger. The stronger your communication is, obviously, the better your organization can do in general. Being successful comes from knowing what to do, when to do it, and how to make that profitable. You know this, knowing this comes from data that can be evaluated, measured, and utilized. You have to collect, measure, and analyze, not in order to be right or to answer a question the way you want it answered, but to make informed decisions so that you can move forward. What slows down the decision-making process is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of being incorrect, fear of making the wrong decision. So the more that we can tap into data, we'll talk specifically what that means and how to do it, the more informed our decision-making is, and so we're less fearful, we make better decisions, we make them faster, and we have a process, a two-way process, so every single decision and everything you do isn't going to work perfectly. But working through a data-driven process allows us to make measurements and adjustments and go back and do it again in a little bit better, different way if it doesn't work exactly the way you hoped the first time. Again, taking the fear out of being wrong or making a mistake. Let's start with the obvious. Data is sexy, right? that's why we're all here today, right? Because data is sexy. In correlation to that, that means data scientist. Right?
Very sexy.
Thank you very much. Now we're ready to get some work done. Whatever those guys are talking about next door, they did not tell you how sexy it is. Okay, that's the truth.
I'm in the wrong field.
Yeah, well, after today, you're going to be an expert, and you can tell people I'm a sexy-ass data scientist. There you go, because data is sexy. All right, let's start with the easy stuff. Let's start with definitions. Number one definition is data. Data isn't zeros and ones in a computer. Data is any useful information. Anything that you can learn about a subject or a topic or a person or a behavior for our discussion is considered data. It's not just math, although math is part of it. It's anything that's useful. The word strategy or being strategic, people misuse this a lot. Being strategic means making decisions that work today, next month, next quarter, and 5 years from now. Being tactical means doing things that work today. Scheduling today's tweets and today's Facebook posts are tactics, but if they're tied into your overall goal of your organization and what you're trying to do over a long period of time, they're strategic decisions. If they're simply filling time and space and trying to move you from Monday to Tuesday, it's not strategic or strategy. Too many people in the world tell you they are social media strategists, marketing strategists. If someone's a strategist, every single decision they make is a long-term effect and not simply day-to-day tactics. You happen to utilize day-to-day tactics, but it has to have long-term effect or it's not strategy. Analysis. Data is any bit of useful information, so analysis is simply making a decision based on what you can learn from the data. Planning. Planning is a subset of strategy. So the basic actions are tactics. Planning is how you get into the mode of working towards a strategy. Setting expectations, they can be goals, they can be KPIs, they can be anything else that's measurable. Setting expectations is measurable. To be great is not an expectation because there's not a specific way to measure that. But increasing ABs by 10% is something that's measurable, and that's setting an expectation. Also, expectations can be tactical. I need you to do these 3 things on this list before 5 o'clock today. It's measurable. And the last definition, too many people interchange marketing and advertising and communication. So When I talk about marketing, I'm talking about the work before the work, the research, the data analysis, the strategy. That then is executed via advertising tactics. Advertising is the outward expression of your strategy. Advertising is a one-way conversation. Advertising is you putting information into the world you want the world to know. Marketing is a two-way conversation, and it's set up to send information out and receive it back. Thus, it can be adjusted and moved forward. Successful marketing depends on consistently making good decisions about who, what, when, where, how, and why, and how much, which is your budget.
Say that again.
Strategic decision making answers the who, what, when, where, why, how, and how much. If you can't answer all those questions, you're not being strategic enough. You're simply in tactics. Data-driven marketing refers to strategies built on insights culled from analysis of data collected through consumer interactions and engagement to form predictions of future behaviors of your consumers, competitors, the general market, etc. What can we learn from data in order to understand what happens next? You can't figure out what happens next if you don't know what's happening today and what happened last week. Data is the real-world info that you can learn through the marketing process, which must be returned back internally and utilized for decision-making process across the BBB. Marketing, data analysis, what your audience is doing, what your competition is doing, what's happening in the market, isn't just a marketing tool. It's a tool for the sales team. It's a tool for the leadership team. It's information that everyone in your BBB can be utilizing if you communicate it to yourselves internally. So marketing is not just an external advertising process, it's also an internal information process. If the marketing team isn't taking what they're learning from the market, from the audience, from consumer behaviors, and informing their sales team and people making decisions, those decisions will never improve. Your marketing and sales won't improve, your numbers won't improve, and your organization can't improve. This is where people often fall down, is they get too focused on data analysis for marketing and not thinking about how the marketing information that you receive back. When things work well in the market, that's your marketing working well. It informs you that your decision-making process is correct. When things don't work well or fail miserably, you still understand and learn that your decision-making process made some mistakes or did things that could be changed in order to be done in a different way. That learning process needs to be communicated to every department in your organization, not just held in the marketing department. If it's just held in the marketing department, you'll be creating marketing strategy that will create advertising messages and public relation messaging and communication that when people who are influenced by it call or interact with a salesperson or meet your CEO at a cocktail party, what comes out of their mouth and what they've heard from your marketing and advertising won't gel, and you've missed the connection. So don't look at marketing and data analysis as only an external process, but essential internal process as well. When marketing goes well, you do more of what's working and less of what's not. And that's a marketing campaign, right? You launch, you have your channels, you have your different sub-campaigns, and some things are going well, and some things not as much. And so the things that are not going as well, you either adjust them, or you take that time and effort and budget and you move it into things that are not going as well, right? Message, channels, timing, tone, repetition, etc. The same information can be conveyed to your operations team. Your operations team can learn from your marketing about internal focus, what's the highest impact, lowest cost to change, and your overall mission. If the market is pushing back on your marketing, if the audience doesn't react to your advertising because your marketing focus is wrong, it's very possible your internal decision-making processes are wrong or incorrect or not based on real-world data, but are simply based on decisions someone simply made one time. Would you rather have decisions made on data analysis or guessing? Right.
It's sexy.
Because data is sexy. But that's why data is sexy. Because it's easier to make a decision because you have something to base it on, right? Of course, all of our current bosses accepted, right? How many folks here have worked for someone in the past who didn't want to listen to anything except their head and their gut?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Were they really good bosses? Were you creating really good marketing via their decision making? No, of course not. But could you ever tell a boss, like, you have to stop it? The way that you move bosses and other people in your organization away from how we've always done it and how I want to do it because my ego says so, or how we're going to do it because it's less work for me, the way you move them away from these decision-making process is through data, statistical analysis with an informed decision that will make it really hard, if not impossible, for them to argue against. So data can be your friend. Sexy, it can be your friend. It can help you with
A sexy friend?
a sexy friend can help you with decision-making processes and help you with a bad boss or a coworker who wants to cut corners or anything else that you know as a marketing professional is going to shortcut your campaign. It's going to end up in not hitting your numbers. And then what happens? Are any of those people sitting in the office with whoever it is talking to you about, we're not hitting our numbers? No. All right, is anyone jumping up and falling on their sword and saying, well, I told them to do that? No. So we have to fight our own way through using data. Of course, all marketing is enacted, measure it, we adjust it, and then we repeat it. You, as marketing professionals, need to communicate what you're learning through these processes to everyone else in your BBB and have them have the same attitude about all sales cycles, all tools the sales team are using, decision making that the executives team are doing, even things your board is doing. They should be implementing, measuring, adjusting, and doing again, just like a marketing team. But I haven't actually answered your question yet as to how we grab a hold of all of this data that's out there and do functional things with it, right? Let's get into that. How do you find and utilize data? There's multiple resources for finding and utilizing data. This is like another area too where a lot of people get intimidated or stuck in a singular way of doing things. The great thing about digital channels, the internet, all of our modern technology that we have to now is there's 100 ways to collect data that we didn't have 10 years ago. The scary thing is there's 100 ways to collect data that we didn't have 10 years ago, right? You can't use them all, but you can't ignore all but one or two at the same time, right? Everyone is going to have to find avenues and tools that work best for them, but there's multitudes of tools. Obviously, you start at the top. Market research typically begins with target market demographics. That's the easy stuff, right? Next, you get into competitive analysis. You have competitors. They're not called BBBs, but they're out there. There are phone apps, there are online services, there are brick and mortar services that compete with you directly and indirectly. The great thing about having actual head-to-head competition is they'll tell you what they're good at and what they're trying to sell through their advertising. If you go to a particular website, try not to throw any names around. You go to a particular website, the first thing that pops up will tell you they have the best price, it's the most convenient, you can do it all on your phone. They'll tell you what their selling points are, which tells you in turn how you compete with them. In marketing, we don't go head to head with our competitors. We don't go their strength versus something that's not our strength. In marketing, we take something that's our strength and we try to position it against a weakness or at least a non-strength of our direct competitors. And how you know is your competition will tell you through their advertising what they're good at, what they're not. No one's ever really great at something and then never tell anyone. Market scope is also an important topic to look at. In business, when I talk to people who are trying to do a startup, they're trying to get investors, they always want to go to market scope to figure out how much money they can make, right? It's not exactly what you're trying to do with your BBB, but you can figure out how effective or not you are being by how many people you are connecting with via your marketing, how many times you're creating interaction. Those interactions can eventually create potential conversions. And then, of course, those conversions are how we're measuring our numbers. If those numbers are 1% of your market scope, you have a ton of work to do. If it's 10% of your market scope, it's really impressive. So if you don't know which end of that scope you're on, you need to know that before you begin new marketing. So don't skip market scope simply because you're not someone who needs to explain numbers to an investor for a startup. You still need to understand where you start so you understand how you're progressing forward. Marketing and social media analytics are another great place for information. Now there's obvious things, click-through, impressions, conversion rates, etc., right? How many of you use a heat map or seen a heat map on a website or these other places where people clicking? A lot of email services now have heat maps and it's showing you what people click, what they don't. All of those things not only should be looked at, but as your marketing happens, you should measure it and then adjust it. The things that get really high clicks, is it because it's a different color, it's titled an interesting way, it's in a different location? Moving things and making adjustments, doing A/B testing will let you figure out what's happening with that. That also can give you an idea of consumer behaviors. The demographics that we started with are really broad ideas. But if we can break down demographics by age, sex, education level, and then things that do get opened, things that do get clicked on, things that do eventually end up with a phone call or something that becomes a conversion, that process right there of learning and eliminating ideas and finding the best ideas to your most likely topic that is going to get conversion. Conversion is the only metrics that really matters. The process of what works and what doesn't, and what succeeds and what fails, is all essential to building your market personas. So it's not just, we got 250 visitors to our website this week. Who were they? What time did they come? How did they get there? What drove them there? How long did they stay? What did they click on? Etc. Those behaviors don't stop at a base level. Dive further down into behaviors. When you start combining behaviors with data, with market analysis, with your demographic analysis, you can create real pictures of real people that you can affect through your marketing. There are also great public sources for data. The IRS has huge amount of data about business owners, types of businesses, how much income they're doing, positive and negative, etc. A lot of that can be utilized through your local chamber of commerce or your state chamber of commerce. The Census Bureau has a ton of information that can be combined. And again, if you take these big numbers and put them with those behaviors that we just started tracking in the last segment, you can start figuring out what's available, what potential there is, and how to move from potential to attention, from attention to conversion by combining all of this data. And again, it's not just for our marketing. Of course, our marketing wants to create advertising that's attractive to these types of personas we've created, how they want to be spoken to, and the message that they want to receive. We have to make sure our sales people, our PR people, anyone who's communicating anytime in the public is also taking the same ideas and the same concepts and talking about our BBB in the same way that our advertising and PR is. Right? You like that?
That's why we're here.
It's a huge it's a huge missed opportunity if you're creating outward communication that has an idea and a concept of who you are and the value proposition of your BBB and membership, etc., and for consumers, the tools to use. If they get a call from the BBB or they get another email or they meet the CEO at a cocktail party and the message that comes out of that person's mouth is completely different. The flip side happens too. Our salespeople are on the phone talking to prospects every day. Now, of course, there's the dance, right? Oh no, I don't. We don't have any extra money. We don't need that, right? All the excuses people give as to why they don't want to sign up for BBB or anything for that matter, right? And we all do it too, right? I catch myself. Oh yeah, let me call you back next week. I have no intent of calling back, right? Our sales professionals are learning every single phone call they are making. If we can teach them what information we need so that they can collect that and bring it back to us to combine with all of the other marketing information we're putting together, then our marketing will be stronger. And then at the same time, we're letting them know what we're communicating via our advertising for them to back that up and to have a consistent message as they're speaking directly. Now you go from a potential to a really great potential for someone to understand what you do, understand the value. If they understand the value and you have their attention, the idea of conversion is much more likely. And the final source for information is economic reporting. And this is one of those things where everyone's going to have a unique scenario here. But here in Oklahoma City, we have a newspaper that's just a business-specific newspaper. They report on business that are opening, businesses that are closing, businesses that are hiring, businesses that are laying people off, businesses that have purchased other businesses, won national awards, etc., right? If you're paying attention to these activities, you might say, there's someone we need to go after, there's someone who should benefit from being in the BBB, there's someone that if they became a member, we could then tell other people they became a member and they would influence others, right? Those kind of things come from publications, from TV, from radio, from things in your media and in your area about business activity. So don't just look at hard numbers, like IRS numbers and census numbers, but also look at day-to-day business communication and trends, etc. Things that are happening in your community, in industries. If you hear about a specific industry that goes way up, if your construction industry has a boom, construction industry often does well in the BBB sales pitch, you should be going after it hard, right? The flip side's the same. If your construction industry in your town just gets hit, there's a huge layoff, maybe the top 2 or 3 construction companies lay off a lot of people, you're not going to get as good of a conversion rate there, and you need to focus in other places. So external communication should always be included in your statistical analysis when possible, and everyone's situation will be different. So again, your competitors are another source of information. Their marketing, but also if they are a public company or someone who has to do any sort of public reporting, you should be paying attention to those resources where those things are published, public records. Often there's sometimes top 10 list or top 50 list in your town, top 50 growing companies, top 50 employers, etc. Seeing movement up and down those lists, or if someone who is doing something similar to what you offer in the community jumps on that list and they've never been there before, now you have to pay attention to them when you weren't in the past. So your competition's success and failures needs to be in your consideration process. And reviews. The way online reviews happen for online review source sites lets you know what people like and dislike about your competitors, especially the online reviews and apps and things of that nature. So don't ignore your head-to-head competitors by not going there. Go there. See what they say about themselves, see what other people say about them, see what their press releases are about economics, about awards, etc. Let them tell you what they think they do well in order to decide how to compete against them. Surveying is another wonderful way to collect data that can be added to your other data sources. You can survey, obviously, your current members, your current ABs, and it's a twofold. You're gaining information from someone who's already converted. So getting a conversion of someone who's going to be very similar to them is your best tactic. So asking someone what they like, what they don't like, what got them from I don't think I want to yes I do. The key and the problem with surveys are, if they're done well, it's a huge, powerful tool that gives you very specific information. If they're done poorly, it gives you mud. That they don't even know what they're answering, and so their answers don't mean anything to you. The key to surveys are keep them short, keep them very specific, try to keep on 1 or 2 topics, not any more than that at a time, and don't lead anyone into answering something. If every answer comes back negative to you, it's fine because we're still learning. So don't feel like your surveys have to be, you guys think we're great, right? So you're going to get a lot of polite yeses, and it doesn't help you. This twofold part of surveying is, with your current members, is giving them a chance to buy in to the direction and the overall action that's happening at your BBB. Let your decision-making process internally be driven by your members, and you can let them drive it by their answers on surveys. The worst thing you could do, though, is say, what is the one thing you all wish we did, and everyone votes on classes about Facebook, and then you don't do a class about Facebook. You made it worse. So let your members have buy-in through answering surveys and take it serious. It'll guide you to your next potential client and the next potential area that you should be exploring, and get them their buy-in they need to feel happy and satisfied with the service relationship, right? Because we don't just get them once, we have to keep them. So their overall satisfaction can be benefited from having regular surveys that we actually pay attention to. You can also use surveys with target groups as a way to introduce what BBB is and what you do to people who are not members or currently signed up for any services you have. So take a small group, let's say CPAs. You can buy a mailing list or an email list of CPAs in a zip code and send them a 3-question email survey. Number 1, whatever information they provide back to you is going to be beneficial as you try to go after that segment the second time. Number 2, it's actually an advertising vehicle. And the questions should reflect, did you know we offer the service? Would you benefit from the service? It's not an ad, but it's an ad. The general public is a great example too of surveying in order to convey information to them. Now, when you get into trying to survey the public, the city of Oklahoma City, I'm going to survey the citizens of Oklahoma City. I'm going to get such a huge variety in the data set, I'm probably not going to find trends that I can break out. But if I'm using it as a communication and a marketing tool, I'm benefiting. So many of the reasons that a lot of people don't utilize data and data analysis, they often say they don't have the technology, like a CRM. But you have a CRM, right? So you can't use that excuse. Even if it's not the greatest CRM in the world, I've never met anyone who loved their CRM perfectly, right? Everyone's like, yeah, but it doesn't do this, right? The CRM is a huge, huge tool. However you're using it in 2018, you're going to be using it more and more and more in 2019, 2020, and beyond. The collection and analysis of data is huge business. This is essentially what Facebook does. Facebook doesn't sell ads to make money, they sell data. And so if we have opportunities to collect data on our current members, our potential members, the people that we tried to sell to that we didn't convert, and then combining that with all kinds of other data that we've collected from other areas, that depository of data, analysis of it, and harnessing for your future decision making is huge. And there are other businesses all over the planet paying people huge amounts of money to have access to probably a tenth of what you have as a BBB chapter. So if you like your CRM, keep using it and try to find every option it has on it. If you hate it, find a way to fall in love with it. It's a very powerful tool for you moving forward. There are other software that can be added to, external software, whether it's data analysis, scheduling your social media, updates to your websites, etc. Anything that ties all of your communication back together, those software options should be utilized more and more and more because it's going to become a bigger part of your marketing moving forward. The other excuse people give about not utilizing data is they have a lack of internal communication or cohesion. We don't talk to the sales team about what we learn in marketing because they just don't get it. Come on, we're communication professionals. You have to, I don't want to say make them understand because that sounds like we're going to beat them over the head. Not saying that. We have to find a way to have conversations that are win-win, good for everyone. Let me help you at your job and you help us at our job so that the organization grows and we all get a bonus at the end of the year and we all keep our jobs, right? We have to communicate that internally. We can't let the communication process die internally and have departments doing different things that are off our cohesive strategy because we have so much data at our fingertips. If we allow that to happen, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So don't let that happen. And finally, people often say they don't have, last thing on internal process. If you don't have a process, write a process. Create a standard operating procedure. If you can't, find ways as a marketing team to have regular meetings with your sales team. If you can't find a way to write a report and give it to everyone else in the building about what you've learned about your consumers, about what their feedback is, about your product and services, about what they like and dislike about you as an organization, if you can't communicate that to everyone in your building, write a process for it. Make it happen. Don't allow it to just be, I asked for a meeting one time, it didn't happen. If you create an actual process, not only will it happen one time, it'll happen on a regular basis, but every time you have that meeting, every time you write that report, every time you do this internal communication and ask for it back, every single time you do it, it gets better and easier. And people understand that it's a process that continues to go on. Adjustments need to be made. Nothing's perfect. No one's getting in trouble. Consumers change. Technology changes. Audiences change. Things that they like and dislike. 10 years ago, would you have success on TV? Sure. What's more successful now, TV or this? So those changes have to be incorporated in how we do all aspects of our business, not just marketing. And we can't do that if we don't communicate internally. And finally, making internal communication of what you're learning through your data and through your interactions with clients and prospective clients, making it a priority. If it doesn't become a priority, if you don't actually work it into your business plan, into your strategy, into the goals you set, create KPIs for internal communications. If you don't do those things, they won't become a priority, they won't happen on a regular basis, and you, as the marketing professionals, will be losing the information that the sales team and other people are getting from the external communication, and vice versa. So, be strong, make it happen. And finally, people say they don't utilize data analysis because they have a lack of customer focus. And once again, I think BBB is in a completely unique situation because you are very customer focused. Your job is to provide products and services for your business customers and consumers. Not random, you're not selling hamburgers, you're not selling t-shirts, you're not selling flavor of the week. You're selling developed systems and processes that benefit business consumers and business owners. You know who your customer is. You know who your best target is. You know who's most likely to say yes to you, and you also know people who will never, ever say yes to you. Utilize that information. Don't allow the excuse of, we just don't know, to not let you utilize data that you can collect in all the ways we've already talked about. Now that we know how to find data, what are we going to do with it? Here's the fun part. You have to make sure that you are using your data in a very proper and specific way. Having data, using data, and making your organization better that leads to more sales and more conversions are all completely different things. Sort of like the difference between being busy, being effective. We started talking about data at demographics. Everything sort of starts at that top level, right? Male, female, ethnicity, age, education level, exactly right. You have to be careful. You don't want to be using stereotypes. But then sometimes you have to use stereotypes. It would be stereotypical for me to say, women like shopping more than men. But is that untrue? Not necessarily, right? Going past basic levels of demographics gets you past stereotypes and into actual consumer behavior. It's okay to start the top level of discussion about creating personas and creating targets at a stereotypical demographic level. Women prefer things like this, men prefer things like this. People in their 20s like this, people in their 50s like this. Apparently millennials don't tip. Who knew? That's what they're saying now, all these discussions about millennials don't tip. But senior citizens aren't really known to play video games. These are stereotypes, these are really broad discussions, but it's just the starting place if your intent is to move past them and move forward. Where utilizing stereotypes will get you in trouble is if your communication is stereotypical. If your communication about retail shopping is pink and all females and it's all about me and the girlfriends like to go shopping, you're going to turn off your target audience and not attract them to you. Same thing. All men like footballs and trucks and guns. Well, not necessarily true. You don't want to turn them off. But you can start at demographics at a really high level, but you just have to move further down from that. Make sure that that idea never gets simplified into your advertising. Greatest way to show sensitivity to diversity and to a modern population is to not be super specific about diversity. You don't have to put the Rainbow Coalition of every type of person and every type of thing. Make sure we have a kid in a wheelchair and a person like this and a person like this and every single thing you do. It also, your advertising can't reflect one type of person, but it doesn't have to reflect everyone at all times. So balance these things out. Get out of stereotypes and come back further into real life. You can think about stereotypes, but you can't say it out loud. If you have a product that is based on retail shopping, internally you're probably going to say this is more likely to be female focused than male. You just can't make all of your external communication reflect that. Other ways, so we start with basic demographics, but we combine it with other information that we complied earlier and other more specific demographic information that we can find from different resources. These include consumer behaviors, sales records, economic indicators, etc., to create sophisticated personas of consumers or business owners. So, not just women like to shop, but what are the things that are being sold most likely, most often in your local malls, and there's economic reports that can tell you that. Then you can make those adjustments back to what people are specifically paying attention to in the audience, in the market, and figure out what motivates them, what communication would connect with them. Names, job, okay, so we want to combine information to create a persona. When it comes to outward communication, the beauty of digital tools is we can customize our communication. Email, and even some direct mail, it can go beyond just a generic, hello, sir, madam, but now we can add people's names, people's job titles. But you can go further than that and give specific messages that are a lot more deeper into things that are specific to that individual that we can learn because of their consumer habits, because of magazines they subscribe to, because of things they've purchased. You can buy by list or by resources for data that you can combine these things to create specific, personalized buyer persona. The reason that's important is a type of communication, whether it's a piece of direct mail or an email or a text message or social media message, if that consumer is so sophisticated, every level that you can add a level of personalization, you can increase your conversion rate 10 to 15%. So start with a name. Start with the company that they own. The owner of XYZ company. We're 2 levels in. Construction company, been in Oklahoma City since 1942. Now we're 3 levels in. Serving the Moore, Norman, Oklahoma City metro area. We're 4 levels in. With 15 employees and A+ rating with the BBB. 5 levels in. That email, what comes next, is going to be read and appreciated by the person who received it. So combining the data that we could pull about information about people, businesses they own, behavior that they have, we can customize communication that is highly convertible. Like I said, you can do that. It's obviously really easy to do that email. You can actually do a lot of variable data direct mail that you can be that specific in the piece of direct mail. The beauty of things like mail and email is when you run an ad in the paper or on TV or even a Facebook ad, it says, hey, we do this, and it's general. When you send someone an email with that level of sophistication in the conversation, and then a link directly to maybe a specific salesperson or a specific number you want them to call, who's going to talk about that type of industry they're in or whatever it is you set up in the email, your conversion rate is huge, and it doesn't alienate or turn off anyone else who didn't get that email or piece of direct mail. It's a beautiful thing when you can send something so specific and not alienate anyone else. It's also a great way to send an offer such as, you used to be a member of the BBB, we'd like you to come back, here's 15% off, or here's a gift card, things of this offer. You don't get someone else going, wait, how come you didn't give it to me if it's in their inbox or it's in their mailbox? You have the data, you know who the customer is, you know what they want or need to hear from you. Now what? What do? We have the power. If we understand who our audience is, what motivates them, the channels most likely to engage them, how to customize the messaging, how to put it into a media mix, how to measure it, our sales team should speak to them when they do call in because we've had a cohesive message, we have an overall strategy. Now all of this is lining up to effective marketing that can convert. Just a powerful tool for us for sure. You can turn that data into actionable marketing that wins and keeps customers. I'm going to focus on keep. Of course, we want new customers. We got to go out and drag some folks in, right? We got new sales. We have to retain too. Retention is the most effective and efficient marketing tool you have in order to make your organization efficient, effective, and profitable. Retention is worth a whole lot more than new customers. But you have to do both. Because you can be awesome at retention and people die. And businesses go out of business. And factories get moved out of the country. These things happen and it's not any fault of yours. So you can have awesome marketing and awesome retention and you'll still lose customers to all kinds of attrition. So we always have to be bringing in new customers at the same time. Do not fail to focus on existing members and existing people using the consumer products and services in effort to draw in new customers. Balance these things out. Without a balance here, your retention goes down, and even if you're bringing in more new customers, new members, the cost is higher to do so. So you're retaining less income. Use your existing customers, the one you're working hard to retain, to inform you when they say, yes, I'm going to renew. ask them why. The thing or things that make them want to renew is very likely something that needs to move up into the sales conversation for your new clients and prospects. Your best target is sitting in front of you right now. Your best target is your current members. Your current members are your best indicator as to who is the most likely to be your next first time buyer. You utilize that information and utilize them and the retention process to be better at attracting new customers. And then you will understand when it comes to the second year and the third year renewals, you'll understand them even better than the folks who informed you a year ago when you used that information for new clients. Make sense? There's nothing better than retention. Holding clients that you already have is the most cost-effective thing you can do. So, overall, you need to use data information to get smarter about what all of these types of numbers, all these types of data, all this information is. You need to be smart about how to utilize it. The first way, it's so easy, you'll think I'm crazy. Common sense. When things work, useful tools that actually create value for our customer and sold it to them in a way that they wanted it to be sold to them and explained it to them and gave them the tools to put it on a credit card or write a check or do etc. And then we followed up with emails and phone calls for the renewal. Of course, that worked. Why wouldn't that work, right? Common sense is the first place to start. The other thing, and this is a little bit self-serving, I'll admit it, third-party experts. Bringing in third-party experts who have a fresh perspective, who are not ingrained in your processes, and this is the most important part, do not have to go to lunch with anyone else in the building on a regular basis. Do not have to come in every day and see someone and say, oh, hey, you called me out in front of the boss. You said our numbers were down. You said our marketing wasn't as good enough as it should be. You said we were missing opportunities here, here, here. Third-party individuals can come in and do that and walk away. That's what you pay them for. As much as you pay them to bring you what's the latest tools, new perspectives on how to do things, you're paying them to be honest with you without any office politics. Utilize your data analysis to optimize spending on every channel. And spending is not always dollars and cents, it's also time and effort. If you are making budgetary decisions without looking at the bulk of your data to direct who your consumer is, where they live, what motivates them, what converts, you're back to guessing. We were saying earlier about that boss who just guesses. Every single economic decision, because it's money out the door that you can't ever get back, needs to be run through a strategic process. What you're trying to achieve, how you're trying to do it, and what you know about your consumers, about your competitors, about their audience, and what works and what doesn't work. All those things have to inform each other back and forth. Day-to-day tactics have a lot more flexibility. What we're going to tweet about on Tuesdays and what the Facebook offer is for the month of May, and are we going to do a Father's Day promotion? Those decisions can be made on the fly as long as the marketing department is always still being strategic, which is everything we do has the big picture tied to it, even if it isn't super specific where you see a direct correlation. But if you're spending money, if you're allocating resources, time and effort, or you're writing someone a check to either do something or buying ad space or paying Facebook to promote a post, you definitely need to run that through the filter of what do we know about this process and what have we learned in the past, and what will this purchase tell us to move us forward. Putting out marketing and advertising that just simply kind of does a thing today. I got to hit 10 sales this week so I can get my bonus. Fine. But if it's not also informing consumer behavior and you're learning what works and what doesn't from A/B test, or it worked on Facebook but it didn't work on LinkedIn, where we ran an ad in one newspaper, or we ran an ad in a different newspaper, and one worked and one didn't. These are decisions and information that you should be drawing from everything you do. If you can't find a way to draw information from it, you're probably spending your money in a poor way. So, make sure you're setting SMART objectives. And of course, the SMART, S-M-A-R-T, stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. As you set your objectives, it should reach all of these things. It should be specific, not increase sales by how much, within what time period. It should be measurable. Numbers are great measures. We want to be better at is not very measurable. 10% increase, super measurable. Achievable. You can't say we're going to double our memberships overnight, or next week, or next month, or even next year. So please don't set an unachievable goal. You're just setting yourself up for failure. Realistic is another variation of that idea. And then timely. All marketing must have a time period based on it. There are general brand marketing. BBB is good for business. That's a general idea that's out there in the world. Promotions, campaigns, drives, anything where you're trying to get people to understand a behavior that ends up in a conversion of some sort has to be in a timetable, start and finish, so it can be measured, adjusted, and done again. If it's something you're going to do forever, you still should be doing it monthly, quarterly, etc., so that you can have a stopping point to measure and adjust. You adjust because it may be working awesome, so let's spend more money on it, or you have to adjust, it's not working as well, we need to figure out what's going on. It's more likely your competition adjusts to what you're doing, or the audience adjusts, because again, 10 years ago, people were looking at TV and they're not looking at it the same way today. So everything has to be in a cycle so that it can be adjusted and measured. As you make those stops to measure and adjust and then do it again, the information you learn needs to be brought back in internally and communicated to your internal team. That's your chance to educate the sales team, educate your boss, educate the VP of whatever about what you learned about your audience, the market, etc. It's often small things. It's not very often you say, for 2 years, we've been offering this, and we've been getting a 12% conversion rate, and now all of a sudden, we're getting a 2% conversion rate or an 80% conversion rate. It's typically not giant like that, but it's typically small moves. But those small items make over time, add up to big moves. So pay attention to the information and make sure it gets conveyed back internally. When you make those adjustments, you make your evaluation, you adjust for your KPIs, right, your performance indicators, you make your moves, you make the move forward. You also need to look at what that information tells you to your overall strategy. So your overall strategy shouldn't be changed on a very regular basis, but it's also not set in concrete for the next 25 years. Overall strategy should be a guide, but it can be affected by what you learn along the way. Make sure that's a two-way conversation. Confidence in strategy via the data that you learn can help you determine the hurdles potential customers are facing during the sales process and how to address those issues. You want to motivate and inspire and move people with your marketing. You want to convert them with your sales team. The gaps or the breaks in that process where it breaks down, where it doesn't convert, that information needs to be conveyed back internally and used to make adjustments moving forward. All right. With that idea, measure twice, cut once. Have you guys heard this? This is what carpenters do, right? You want to waste. Right. Okay, seamstress, right? Anything that's a cut is a permanent waste of something that's cut wrong. You want to do that. Measure, adjust, repeat. We've said this over and over again, right? Develop business-related analytics that can be put to use for just this. Create measurement tools and KPIs that are specific to your organization and your goals and what you're trying to achieve. Someone like me can tell you big ideas, but you have to decide what actually works for your tactics, your execution in your market with the assets you have in place, the sales team you have, with the competition you have, with the economics you have, etc. It has to be completely what works for you. The key to measurement, stay open-minded, to not measure in order to prove yourself right or to prove a program works, but to measure to learn from the process. If you're trying to, you can find anything you want in data if you set out to find that. If I decide I want to present some data to a client that says that their social media is really driving conversion because that's what they pay us to do, I can find ways in the numbers to make it look that way. Don't set out to measure your data to justify your best idea or the things you want to do more of. Do the things that your audience tells you they want and works. That's all that matters. At the end of the day, if you pay attention to what works, what matters for your consumers, that you can be utilized by your organization, that you can convey through the process, you'll have a higher conversion rate, more numbers coming in the door, higher retention, organization does better, everyone gets bonuses. It's better off for everyone. So it's not about I was right in my approach to doing more Twitter, less Facebook, stop doing direct mail versus TV, adding radio, putting a podcast in the rotation. Those are tactics. Don't fall in love with your tactics, because your tactics can change and will change. Instead, fall in love with the process. The process of creating a strategy, developing a plan, creating tactics that you know some will work and some won't, creating measurement before you implement it, implementation, measurement, adjustment, re-implementation, over and over and over again. The attitude and the process, internal communication, all of this combines to effectiveness and efficiency. If you do that, your marketing will always kick ass. If you do marketing that's cool and fun, and let's do a little bit this week, and a little bit this week, and a little bit this week, and there's no measurement, and there's no timetable, and there's no strategy, you're not going to move the needle, you're not going to convert higher, you're not going to do better economically for the organization, you may not get bonuses. See how that works? Right. So don't get caught up in, I need to be right about this. Get caught up in creating processes that consistently work and are built to be adjusted. If you're looking to make things that make you look smart right the first time, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you create a process that is continually adjusted along the way, you'll always be doing as good as you possibly can. Data has no ego. So keep your ego off of it. And this is coming from someone who from time to time has been accused of having a lot of ego. So it's very easy to say, I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to go do this. It's much easier to say, I know what I'm doing because I've done the work, I've collected the data, I've done the analysis, I can explain to you what it's going to be, I have a system in place that will be adjusted because nothing is perfect in the world, especially in business, and it will continually over time improve itself. That is super effective, efficient marketing, which make you look very smart, which should stroke your ego. This takes us back to where we started. Marketing is a two-way conversation. Marketing is a cycle. It's the work before the work of advertising, PR, communication, etc. All of the strategy, all of the data and analysis and implementation and adjustment and measurement and repeat, and then the communication to the rest of your team, to the rest of the people in the organization, to your board, to every stakeholder involved. That process, that two-way communication process, is what we do as marketing professionals. It's presented as advertising and communication. It's presented internally as communication, but it's our job to drive this cycle. make these adjustments and move our organization in a way that our audience wants us to move, not the way a person who's an executive or a person who's on a board or a person who you hired to come in for the week and talk to you. It's not about how they want it to happen, it's about how your audience wants it to happen. It's a two-way conversation. It never stops. It always adjusts. There's multiple moving parts at all time. So managing that process makes you a badass. So with that, gladly open you up to Q&A. It's like totally went through a bunch of stuff really fast.
I think it's clear we need data, but what are your recommendations to measure data, like which rows or?
I always start with competitive analysis. I always look at what other people who do similar things to your offering are doing. Their advertising is going to let you know what they do well and what's profitable for them and what consumers pay attention to. So that's step number one. And your competition is primary and secondary, right? So for the BBB, it's real simple. Home Advisor is a direct competitor. Yelp is a direct competitor. But your local Chamber of Commerce is an indirect competitor because they offer things for businesses that are similar to the business services that BBB offers. Not exactly, but similar. So if you look at direct competitors, what they're doing, how they're competing, how they're positioning themselves as strength versus you, then you do an internal analysis. What are we really good at and what are we not? And every organization has strengths and weaknesses, just like every human being has strengths and weaknesses. The failure in this process is not being honest internally with your teams, because egos, this is why a third-party person is really good for this. People's egos, like, oh, maybe our sales team isn't as good. And that's a weakness and something we need to work on. If you can't admit that, and you say your sales team's great when they don't say the right things on the phone and they can't convert, all of this great work in marketing and data analysis and everything else is for naught. You can't convert from sales, and vice versa. Or if the executive leadership has a poor reputation in town, and when it gets to the conversion process, people to go, well, I heard you guys, I heard this, and this is bad, this is bad. So understanding your strengths and weaknesses, utilizing your strengths, maximizing your strengths, and trying to mitigate your weaknesses, fix them or just make them not part of the conversation, change the conversation. But then how do you position against your competitors? Because they have strengths. You don't want to go against their strengths. You want to take a different path. You want to position yourself differently. So if you start with a competitive analysis, what everyone else is really good at, that they'll kind of win a head-to-head competition. And then secondarily, you do an internal analysis. You look at what your organization does well. Things can be fixed. Things can be improved. You can you got to work on the weaknesses, but you got to start with the strengths. And whatever you're really good at, I can tell you, BBB of Oklahoma City, they're great at customer service. They have high marks for customer service. They hang their hat on that. So we position them against the online and the apps with customer service, with human interaction. It's a real strength they have, not one we made up for marketing, but real strength. Versus you can't get that from the competition. So that positioning is the key to making headway. So if you don't know those two things, if you can't start there, it's hard to say we need to be improving things internally, or we need to be utilizing the tools we have, or we need to be better at this, if you don't know what those strengths and weaknesses are and how it helps you against your competition. The weaknesses that have nothing to do with how you beat your competition, you can deprioritize. So let's say you have an ugly building, and that's a weakness, is that people think your building is ugly. But that's a 100 out of 100 reasons why people would say yes to a BBB membership. We don't have to worry about it. If it's number 3, we have to fix it. So understanding strengths and weaknesses and prioritizing them, and then how you compete in the market, those are the 2 places you have to start. If you don't know those answers, everything else kind of falls out from that. And if you start doing tactics without understanding that, you're just willy-nilly. You're just hoping it works. Does that answer your question?
You mentioned purchasing lists in your examples, like accountants. Where do you go to buy those lists for both the business side and the consumer side?
So if you were to direct mail and email, there's tons of, literally Google is your friend on this. There's tons of services online that you can buy based on different types of consumer behaviors, job titles, zip codes, economic factors, etc. So list companies, they used to be all direct mail lists, but now they've gone real heavy into email because it's more cost efficient. Those are great services to start with, but I typically find just buying a list, you know, we all get spam, right? We don't really want that, but so buying a list of everyone in your zip code that makes over a certain amount of money, that has certain job titles, gets you a nice starting list, but then you need to compare that to something else, and that's where things from your local chamber and things like that, based on job titles and things like that, you can combine these out and find some more detailed personas. So essentially you're gonna buy a list of like 10,000 names. You wanna whittle that down to other information that you can combine with that to like 1,000 to be effective. Or you're gonna send out 10,000 emails and 2 are gonna get opened because it's spam. So starting place is buying list, and then combining that with other information that we talked about, economic, job titles, work, et cetera, that you can get from state and local chambers, and using Excel or some other system to sort those things out to find the correlations and dump out the stuff that you don't know. Like everyone that lives in your zip code makes this much money, that works in these types of areas, but we don't know their job title, it gets kicked out. And we can combine it with job titles from their local chamber and name the job title. Now you've got some more sophisticated list. It's work, but your conversion rate's much higher. And every level you go down, it gets higher and higher and higher.
I wanted to follow up on passing your data on to your staff, how important that is.
Absolutely.
We started asking questions in staff meetings as we hired a new development team, and we just implemented starting last month that each week we all get an email, the same email, that says what businesses signed up, what businesses retained, and then the why. You know, was it because of the brand recognition? Was it because of this? So we all know and we're working towards our strategic goals together. And it's really, really helped everybody across the office. We're having the same conversation, as you said.
And the old way of doing business was done in silos, right? I used to work corporate marketing, and they wouldn't let us talk to the sales team. And no one wanted to talk to the accounting team. And no one wanted to go to the VP, you know, the C-suite. No one wanted to go up there and talk to those guys and girls, because everyone was looking for a reason to say no to something, or to put blame, or to take your credit, right?
Right.
That's the other thing too, right? Marketing people, everyone takes our credit, right? So that old way, that's a good way to die. That's a dinosaur way of doing business. And so yes, putting everyone around the table, take those silos down, have the conversations back and forth, because not one thing does it. The sales team can't do it by themselves. The marketing team can't do it by themselves. The executive team can't lead anything if it's not happening. So the more, that's why developing systems, yes, developing systems, developing attitudes about sharing data. It's not about, I'm going to tell you how to sell. Because I don't want to tell anyone how to sell. I don't do sales. But I want to tell them what we're marketing information that we're putting out in the world and we're finding effective, because people are clicking on it and they're going to it and they're requesting more, etc. And have them, with their common sense, right, say, well, that makes sense, because when I say this, they perk up or they stop saying no, right? That's where we become sophisticated in our process. That's where you go from being a used car salesman to a sales professional. That's when the marketing team and the sales team communicate with each other. This is how business is going to be done moving forward. And businesses that want to be, I'm the boss and I said so, don't talk to them, that's not your job. With those silos, they're dinosaurs and they're dying. So we don't want to be dinosaurs. We want to be progressive and moving forward, and this is exactly how we do that. And the smaller an organization is, the easier it is to accomplish that. But you have to have everyone around the table with an attitude of making the process better and not, what does that do for my job? Because it's, don't tell me how to do my job. Don't make my job harder than it needs to be, right? These are excuses people get, right? So you're right on the right path, for sure. Any other questions before I let you guys go?
I'd like to get more specific about, I like when you talked about our competitors.
Yes.
So if I wanted to, on a local level, present to
differences between Yelp and us and what they do well and what we do well. What scares me is they are so dissimilar to us, even though they're direct competitive, that it's hard for me to figure out exactly what to measure. Like, because, I mean, you know, you're a for-profit company with buku millions to do the same thing.
Right.
So my difficulty is comparing apples and oranges because I know that technically, you know, they're a competitor. Like, how would I select what to talk about?
So the apple to apple is easy, right? Reviews and things like, so, but then in business, it's not about being better, it's about being different. I can, as a consumer, I can understand how you're different and thus better. It's not beating someone head to head, it's being different. Let those losses be, only focus on the places that you can win because those are legitimate strengths you have. It's because you do it different.
You know, it's interesting that you say that. I've always thought, so one of the things that is a competitive advantage for us is because a lot of these other services don't offer dispute resolution, right?
Right.
They don't. And I've noticed over my tenure here that there's such loathing and fear about talking about the fact that we do dispute resolution because the word complaint is a scary word and we're afraid we're going to lose, you know, our base
Right.
By using it. But it's interesting to me to hear you say it because it seems like that's what we should be talking about. Like it seems like, and I remember too, data driven. They presented years ago on, it was a Nielsen study where they basically said that the consumer's favorite product and the one that they use most frequently is dispute resolution.
Right.
You know, so I think getting past that fear is something maybe you can talk a little bit more about how do we convince people that are paralyzed, even with data, to maybe consider communicating.
Because what you just said, so there was a study that proved that the attitude was not correct. Literally the usage, the consumer usage was high. So that is data that tells you that people want to use it, they do use it, and so they need to know more about it. Typically, also what you'll find is if you did a survey, if you followed a survey off of that, to people who never used your resolution process, they would tell you they didn't know it existed.
Exactly.
So if you get that combination, I didn't know it existed, and the people who did utilized it and valued it and rated it high in value, now it tells you the idea of we shouldn't talk about it because it's negative. That idea is wrong because the data disproves it. So if you can find the data that disproves an attitude, then you can change that attitude. Positive versus negative, or should we say this or not, or do our business members not like us talking about resolution because they think that means all we do is deal with bad business, right? That's a common misconception about BBB. So if you let that paralyze you, you can't move forward. You have to find a way through consumer behavior to position that, say it in the way that consumers want to hear it, and business owners not only not find it negative, find it positive. For them to say, oh, if I can make a contact with the person unhappy and direct contact them and fix their problem for them, that sounds great.
Yeah.
As a business owner, I love that. So it's not the BBB tells you suck. It's the BBB presents you an opportunity to communicate directly to a client or customer who maybe have a less than favorable opinion of you in order to resolve that dispute and keep your rating high through your actions. That sounds a whole lot better than we let people complain about you, because I can't go on Yelp as a business owner and I can comment, I'm sorry you had a bad time at my restaurant, but it doesn't change my score. The only way I change my score is to buy my way. And trust me, I've got plenty of clients who want to buy their better rating on Yelp. It's expensive. It's not $10, you know. So finding the thing that makes sense to the people most likely to do it is the key. And those people will tell you through their behaviors and through surveying and through things at work, and then the way your competition talks about with Yelp, whatever they talk about being, hey, people like us for this, convenience, it's right on your phone, That's their way of telling you what they're good at. So you can avoid those things and just stay in places that you have strength. Avoid their strengths with your strengths. Does that help? Okay. I think that's our time. It's 4:18.
Thank you.